Okay, so this is basically my first YouTube videos, so bear with me. But I'm starting to reach out for community support, so I'll try to keep this brief. My name is Gay Marie, and this is me and my son, Bailey, a few years ago. And now all I have left of Bailey is pictures, his clothes, his artwork, and a bag of ashes. And it's been devastating. Bailey was 19, autistic, dependent. He was learning money management. He was disabled. And he was targeted, intentionally targeted, in a financial exploitation check cashing scheme. The crime occurred on July 24th, 2017. I noticed there was a problem with the banking on July 27th. We tried to report it to the police each day and kept being pushed to another agency till we finally got to the state police on July 28th, Saturday, or 29th. Yeah, 29th, Saturday. Long story short, the investigator came to our house on July 31st, my birthday, and asked Bailey if he could identify the individual in the video at the ATM where the bank fraudulent check was deposited. And Bailey could not. He did not know this person. And Bailey had been stressed since it occurred. He knew that a crime had been committed once I notified him that Thursday. And on that Monday, the 31st, less than 5 hours after police had asked him if he could identify the perpetrator in the video, Bailey killed himself less than a block from our home. And everything, not just in me, but law enforcement, all of the evidence, really does show that Bailey did not realize that he was a victim under the law. He was coerced into this situation. It started with a text message from social media from someone who knew of him from school, even though he was in a self-contained educational program at the high school. And Bailey was at first hesitant to help them. The plea was that they had this check and neither of them had a bank account, and could he help? And Bailey, who had only been banking for about eight months, had never written a check, and who was on a joint account with me because he was learning money management, wanted to help. And at first he was skeptical. According to the primary perpetrator, there were two, a male and a female. He was skeptical, according to her testimony, and she further coerced him by assuring him that he wouldn't be in any trouble, everything was legit, and oh, by the way, just for helping us out, we'll give you $200 from the check. Bailey gave them his PIN number and his bank card, and the check was deposited at a bank that we never go to, that he never goes to. And the long and short of it is the primary person was arrested. She had committed another crime after this. And so they picked her up for this, and she was charged with first-degree felony endangering a disabled person. And that charge goes to both intent to harm and knowingly engaging in activity, knowing that it would be harmful. Her accomplice was going to be charged with fourth-degree grand larceny. And I was outraged from the very beginning because neither of these charges reflected their role in my son's death. And apparently there is a separation in New York State and in many states when it comes to being held liable for a suicide. And in most cases, I agree with that. I agree that we can't necessarily hold people accountable for someone else's suicide, except when there is an intentional crime, and especially against someone who is vulnerable and can't defend themselves, who would have difficulty distinguishing between legit and not legit, who doesn't necessarily have the comprehension or faculty to understand that they're being taken advantage of, or how money management works, or how banking works. And in that case, I think, yes, your actions, your criminal actions, intentional criminal actions, set this into motion, and therefore you should be charged with the death. And so since then, I've been pushing for new legislation called Bailey's Law. We do have a bill, and it basically links the first-degree felony endangering charge. Remember, now that's intent to harm, with both promoting a suicide and also second-degree manslaughter. Now, the second-degree manslaughter, those are both Class C felonies, whereas the first-degree endangering is a Class E nonviolent felony, and it has no teeth. The primary perpetrator, despite the judge whose hands were tied through this whole thing, and despite all of the evidence, the DA gave her a golden plea deal that reduced her charges, wiped out her other charges in an completely unrelated court case. She had to pay $216 in restitution to the bank, and she was given 3 years probation. And she went on to commit another crime while our case was being adjudicated, and they still gave her the plea deal. And to me, this is not justice. This does not send the message that you may not target our most vulnerable citizens and get away with it. The manslaughter, if it were to be linked to manslaughter runs a maximum of 1.5 years in jail. And generally, they only have to serve 2/3 of that. So we're not asking for a lot. We're just asking that it be more significant than simple probation. There should be no probation for loss of life in these situations. And it's not just people like Bailey that are young with autism or a developmental disability. If you Google suicide among the elderly who are financially exploited, there are stories that come up. There are news articles that come up. And unfortunately, New York State did a study in 2016 that showed, of all the financial exploitation cases that happen, at least 30% of them, 25 to 30% of them, are aged 18 to 58. So it's not an issue of age, as everyone wants to believe. The one common denominator is disability. They target the elderly because of a disability. They target the people under 60 because of disability. This is an issue about disability. And we need to close the gap between where the law says that being culpable for suicide is strictly about aiding, abetting, or encouraging or enabling a suicide. We have to draw these together to say, you know what, your actions and your intentional actions set off the sequence of events that led to this, and therefore you are liable, just like a DWI. People who are charged with it, who cause loss of life with DWI, are charged with vehicular manslaughter. There is no difference here. So without getting too far ahead, there will be more videos, but I urge you, please go to baileysbridges.org, read the full story, go to the petition. The site right now is under maintenance, but there is a button that says sign the petition, and it'll take you to the complete story with all of the updates as it was unfolding. And sign the petition and share it, please. We need you. I need you, because I cannot sit by and let this happen to another child. I cannot sit by while another parent gets a bag of ashes that is now their child, and there is no justice for that. There is no justice. So I'm begging, please, help me. Help me help them. And that's all I've got to say at this point. Thank you.